So, controller time. Let's work on the sign-up controller and make sure we do something with the file. And do something with the file actually means two things. It means link the file to our user in the database, so create a real image URL, but also roll back the creation of the file if we have a validation error, for example. Now let's maybe start with the rollback mode. If we do have a validation error, so if we're in here, then I don't want to continue. I instead want to delete the file. The same, of course, is actually the case for any error I have here anywhere. So if I have an error here or anywhere else, this does not matter. So you could argue that it makes sense to integrate this rollback logic into our general error handler, maybe. So in app.js, we have this general error handling logic here, and there we can check if we do have a file, and if we do, we want to roll back because we had an error. We certainly don't want to keep it. Now the cool thing is, Malter adds us a new property to the request object, a file property, if we do have a file. So we can check if this is set, and if this is set, we know there is a file as part of the request. So the request where something failed had a file. We now want to delete that file that was stored on the disk. To delete it, we can import a Node.js core module, and that is the FS, the file system module. Here, like this. This allows us to interact with files in our file system, and it allows us to, for example, delete files. So with this imported in our error handler here, we can call unlink. Well, this doesn't sound like a delete, but this is in the end what it does. It deletes this file. So here we then just have to point at the file. We can do so with request file path. Path is a property that exists on this file object, which Malter adds to the request, and this points to the file, and this will delete it. Now on unlink, provide a callback here, which will be triggered when the deletion is done. You get an error, which might be thrown if something goes wrong, but here I'll just log it. I don't care about an error here. If file deletion failed at this point, it is what it is, but we can always manually clean it up. It's not horrible if we still have the file around. With that, delete the file which is currently stored in images and save everything and try that submission again. So let's click on sign up here, and I get user exists already. Please log in instead. But if we now go back, we see nothing is in images, and that is great. So we correctly roll back this image upload. So that's one thing. Back to the user's controller, we can now also use the file for something more useful, because rolling it back, of course, is nice. But more importantly, we want to store it on our user which we create. We are extracting our data here, and Malter will give us this body property on the request with all the text fields it found on the incoming request body. So we will still get that thanks to Malter. But in addition, we have this request file thing I showed you. And with all that information provided, we can add it all to our user. So now here, on the user we create down there, I want to replace this image field here with http localhost 5000 / plus request.file.path, which should be uploads / images / file name. This is the image URL I want to construct here. Now, storing the full URL here certainly is one thing we can do, but we could also argue that we want to prepend this thing here on the front end, actually. So we could just store the file path here in our image field, not the full URL, just the path on our server. And with that, new users should have that path included. Now to see that in action, I'll go back to MongoDB Atlas and actually delete all my users I got here so that I can start from scratch again and I don't have any existing users in the database. So let's delete all the users we created in here. Step by step, every one of them. And whilst this is deleting, I'll also go to places and also delete all the places I created in the past. In my case, that's one place. So let's delete this as well. And with that, we should have no more places and no more users. We got 2 empty collections here. And we can now go back to the React app and leave the credentials here as we have them and click sign up. And this doesn't look too bad. Now, this image is not displayed here yet because we're storing just the path on the server, not the full URL. But if we have a look at our users collection here again, we see our user and we see the image path here. And now we just need to tweak the front end a little bit, and on the users page, or to be precise, inside of the users list, on a single user item, here on the avatar, what I pass here to image should of course include props image, but since this is just a path, I'll wrap this here into backticks and instead point at http localhost 5000/ and then here dynamically inject props.image. And if we do so and save this and go back to the React app, it still doesn't work. And you see we got a not found error. Now the URL actually is correct though. It's localhost 5000/upload/images and then the image name. So why is it not shown here? Because we need to change more on the backend.